Okay. All right. So in today's class, we'll basically be looking at parameterized routing. Right. So like I said, it's basically endpoint that has dynamic values within them. Okay. So we look at that with example because I believe at our level, I think we should be focused on more practical, less of theory. I think the practicals do stay because yeah, I believe that we are already familiar with this already. So we just add to what we've already known. All right. So for the course of the class, we'll be looking at intro to it. We're looking at path parameters, query parameters, and as well as request body. All right. And then with those, we run off for today's class. So briefly, what exactly is parameterized routing? All right. So like I said, these are basically web frameworks, all right, that actually know what allow developers to define routes with dynamic paths. All right. Now those dynamic values within our route can be known as parameters or route parameters. Okay. So this enable us to do what to pass customize or specific values to our URL, and then this URL is automatically being passed to our server side, and then we could extract these parameters or these values and do what proceed with other logic behind the scene. And we'll see how we can create this in Fast API. All right, this feature is not only available on Fast API. Of course, it's a web development fit concept. So as far as backend goes, this concept exists both in Python and every other programming language on or every other web frameworks. All right, these features actually exist as well. But for this class or for the sake of this bootcamp and this track, we will focus on Python. All right, Fast API. So and there are types of parameters, of course. So now these path parameters we have several of them. All right, we have the path parameters, which we will look at this. So basically, the path parameters are what is mostly used, all right, to identify specific resources or entities. If we've ever gone to a web application, and then within this web application, when you click on a specific resources, we see certain ID or certain value assigned to that particular resources. Now that ID is what the browser or is what the server would use to do what to identify, to uniquely identify a specific resource in the in our project. All right. And then we also have query parameters. Right. So query, we people mostly conflict these two parameters, but they're two different things, right? So query parameters are basically that those parameters that are actually in our URL as well. Okay. So both path and queries is there in your URL. Now the difference is that the query parameters are those are the parameters that follow immediately after your question mark in your route or in your URL. So if you've ever gone to a platform, all right, or a website, and then you carry out a search, and then you tend to see that that your search or your search keyword has actually been appended to your URL immediately after a question sign, a question mark sign, okay? Then that query or that parameter is what we know as query parameters. And we also have request body parameters. So basically, these ones are the one that comes with certain with certain HTTP methods, such as post, put, and patch. Right. So basically, these are parameters that comes when we submit a form from our client side or when testing our URL. We will look at this. All right. We will look at this shortly. All right. So let's see how we can actually define path parameters in Fast API. Right. So quickly we will load up our project, okay, and then we will see how we can do this. So I believe that we've already opened up our project and our server is running, So quickly let's do that. Let me open up mine. Quickly open up mine. So I have mine available here. So I would simply navigate to this URL. and I'll open this up in VS Code. So I just change directly there, and then I'll open this up in my VS Code. All right, so while that is actually trying to open up, I will go ahead and all right, so I think we're having up and running now. So while that is still loading, all right, we'll go ahead and open our virtual environment. So we could, if we could remember, in our last class, we created what a virtual environment. Reason being that we want every project to have specific dependencies or requirements per project. So if I want to create another project, I'll do what? I'll create another virtual environment for that project. And I'll keep doing that for each and every project I intend to build. So quickly, I will load up the virtual environment for this particular project, and I'll call this, and the environment name was VENV, and we have script, and then we have the activate. That will activate our virtual environment, which is what we've seen right there. And then I will simply execute my turn on my server. All right. So first of all, I'll be certain that I am in the right directory. Clearly, I am in the right directory. So that is my main.py file there. So to run our server, we simply use the uvcon package uvcon followed by the file name, in this case, which is main, and then colon the app, and then dash dash reload to automatically reload our server for each changes we make to our file. And then I will execute this. And that will execute. All right, and that has executed and as well has given us a URL that we can take to our browser and do what and view this. So I'll take this to our browser, and we'll just paste this here. Then we have our simple API view there. So I believe this was where we stopped in our last class. Okay, so for those of us that were not there, this was where we stopped. So we'll just continue from there. Okay, so how do we define a path parameter, right? So let's start with path parameter as being a type of routing parameter. Okay, so I'll just simply put a comment there and put this path parameter. Right. Now, if we go back to our slide, we see that the path parameters are those parameters that we create using curly braces, or similar to string formatting in Python. So if you go back here, we have that's parameters are what are usually enclosed in curly braces, right, and can have optional type notation, right? We will look at that as well. So that means to create a path parameter, we must have a variable within what curly braces in our URL. Okay, and let's simply do that. So if you go back to your code, go back to our code, and we will copy one of these function here, and we will create another route. And probably this route, we will call it book or dash detail, assuming, okay, and then followed by the specific of that book. So let's assume that, of course, we are working with, let's say we are building a book management system, all right? And then we want to get the detail of a specific book. And then a specific book can be identified by either its unique ID in our database or whatever you wish to use to identify that book uniquely. Now, in order for us to do what to get this ID, so we can filter this book, we can get this ID from our URL, from our route, and our route is being defined using this function decorator there. So now to create a path parameter, we simply do what? We simply have a curly braces within our we simply have a curly braces within our path definition. So I'll come here and then I'll put a curly braces there. Now within these curly braces, we will give a variable or a means of what of identifying this ID. So in this case, I can simply call this ID. So basically, what we are doing here, we are simply saying that when we navigate let's say to a specific domain, in this case, our domain here is 127.0.0 port 8000. Yes, plus port 8000. Okay, that's our local host. I want to be sure that is that. Let me confirm that. Yeah, let's confirm that, and we could just simply get that from our browser. So from our browser, we have that port 0.0.0.1 port 8000. So let me correct that. So this is 0.0.0.1 port 8000. So this could be our domain for now. Okay. So now it simply means that for us to navigate here, it means that we have to go to a specific domain followed by a slash book what detail. But then that it doesn't just end there, right? It doesn't just end there. The server also expect that there is a value that is coming in here, and that value can be known as ID. At the moment, the value can be of any data type. So the value can be ABC, and that simply means that our ID here is what is ABC. The value can still be 1, 2, and this simply means at this point that the value is what, that the ID is what is 12. So at this point, the ID is not, we do not specify the specific type, right? But then we know that there should be a value immediately after the book detail, and that value is what we will consider as ID. Okay, as ID. So we can just simply just copy this, and then we go to our browser, and then let us reference this. All right, so but before then, you'll be wondering, so after getting this ID, what happens? All right, so let's assume that the user has actually inserted a value there that represents the ID. How do we get this ID in our function? So what happened is that by default, Fast API will automatically pass that ID to your function itself. So it means that as far as you have a path parameter, your function should also have room to contain that path parameter. So it means that if you have a path parameter here in your function, you should also have the same value, the same variable, all right, assigned to that path parameter, because by default, automatically, Fast API will pass that value from your URL to the function itself. So that means you should create room awaiting that value, right? And that value and your function parameter as well should also be of the same variable name with your path variable. Okay. So now if we go back, I will for now I will simply just return the ID whatsoever the user has typed in there. So in this case, I will return ID being ID, a value that is being passed to our function. So we'll go to our URL and let us try this out. So I'll copy this, go back to our function, sorry, to our browser, and we'll put this here, and then in this case, I'll basically just type anything like ABC, and then we have detail not found. Let's see what is going on here. Okay, let's try something else. So detail not found. Right, so let's debug this and let's see what is happening.
I think you use double slash.
Wait,
I think you use double
oh,
slash.
sorry, yeah, that is true. So sorry about that. So we move that one slide and then we shoot this, and then we could see that whatever we pass as the path parameter is being transferred to the function, and then we can simply access it within the function, just as what we've done here in our code right here. So you see that we define the path parameter, we create room for it in our function, and then we simply access it within the function. So like I said, for now, that ID can be anything. We have not specified what type of parameter should come in there. So if we go back to our browser, we can still put in ABC here, and this will still work. Of course, the ID sends back ABC. We can still put in whatever we want there, and it will still work. 12 point this, and that still works. Is there a question before we proceed? Question? No question.
Sorry, I have a question. Good evening.
Okay, sure. Good evening.
Yes. So, you said that whatever we define as the ID is supposed to be reflected in our function and also be returned in a value, right?
Yes, I said that that when we define a path parameter, that Fast API will automatically pass that value to our function. All right, and then we can access it within our function. So if we want to return it back, we can still return it back. But if you want to use it for any logic within our function, we can use it, and then we can then return the desired value. But the whole
Okay.
concept is that we can actually extract this value from our URL and use it within our logic. That's the whole logic of path parameter. Did that make sense?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Any other question? No other question. All right. So the silence means no other question. All right. So let's continue. Right. Let's continue. All right. So looking at this. All right. Looking at this, we of course I'm looking at our URL here. All right. The ID should be something of integer, right? But so far, that ID they can actually accommodate any data type at the moment. So we can actually specify that we want this certain part of or this certain type of ID. That we want this certain type of ID. So the way we do that is by making use of Python type hinting. Python type hinting is, are we familiar with that? Okay, the silent there means that we are familiar with it. All right, so we can actually go back to our function, and then within our function parentheses.
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. All right, so let me quickly explain Python type hinting. All right. So Python type hinting is basically the ability or the feature where we can specify the type of data type that a specific variable or function parameters can accept. All right. So when we do that, let's go back to our IDLE. Let's go back to our IDLE. Let's carry out a very simple function, and then we'll come back here. Let's go back to IDLE, and then let's explain type hinting. All right. So basically, type hinting is more like let me create a new file. And okay, so let's create a function here, right? Let's create a function here, and let's say we have a function called addition. All right, and this function is to carry value a and value b. Basically what this function will do is return the sum of a plus b, right? That is a simple function. Now if we try to call add, and then we give a value of 10. All right, give me a copy this. Let's bring it back to VS Code. Let's see, VS Code does the magic for us. All right, so let's see, we have add, and then in add, all right, so this is what we mean by hinting. All right, so you see that the moment we try to execute our function, there is a hint right above our function that says that this takes in what a of any data type alongside with b of any data type. Right. So now we can also give our own hinting where we don't just accept any, but then we can accept a specific data type. So now if you go back to your function declaration, and then within each of the after each parameter, we put a colon, and then we use any of the native data type. Let's say in this case int, right? Now, if you see that if I go back again to execute this function, I say add, and then you could see that has changed. That it automatically tells us that the value of a must be an integer, right? That this function takes two values, a and b. But then the value of a must be an integer, and the value of b can be of any data type. So we say that if we try to, let's say, I put in any random value here. In this case, I put in a float, let's say 12.7, right? And then of course b can be of any type. So I can just put like a string of hello, or let's say a string of, let's say, 10, or an integer of 10. So that if I try to execute the, let me comment this out for a second. Now if I execute this, you see that this will throw an error for us. And that did. Okay, let's assign this to x, and then let's print x instead. And then let's run this again. Type conversion. I see what you did there. All right, let's do like this. Let's not carry out the addition, but instead let's carry out. Okay, let's give this a string for now, and then let's call this one integer for now. And then let's explicitly say that a is equals to 12.5, and b is equals to let's say hello, and then let's execute this, and this is none. That should throw an error. What happened? That did not work. Expected. All right, we'll come back to that. All right, so but the whole concept here is that the Python type hinting is basically you specifying a specific data type that each of your parameter can accept, and you do that by assigning a column alongside with any of the native data type to that variable, just like what we did here, such that when we try to execute this function, it automatically gives us a hint up above there that's saying that this specific function takes in two variables, a and b. A should be of string and b should be of integer. So similar concept is what we will apply, and then fast API will automatically validate saying that this specific part parameter should be of integer and not of and not of any other data type. So we'll basically copy this, all right, and then we'll come back to our function here, up here. Let me just uncomment this out. And then we will come back to our function, and then we will come here, assign a colon, and then we say that the ID must be of int data type. And if we go back to our terminal, this must have refreshed. This must have refreshed. And we should go and refresh our page. So you go back to our page, and then we try something like, let's say hello as ID. When we refresh this, see this give an error, right? And it says that input should be a valid integer, unable to pass strings as an integer. So even if you pass let's say you pass in another data type here, right? So Python will try to see if you can convert that data type to an integer, and then if you can, then your request should go through. But in such a way it cannot, then it will throw up this error telling you that of course your path parameters should be a valid integer. Okay, so that's how you can actually specify a specific data type that your path parameter can carry. And if you also go back, you are free to use any of the native data type. All right, so you can still use float here, you can use string here if you depending on what you expect your ID to be, depending on what you expect your ID to be. And then if you go back here again, and then if you go back here again, and then let's say you put in 12 here, an integer, and then you refresh this, you see that it did work. It did work, but then we actually specify what float. Now the reason is that why that remember I said that Python will try to what to see how you can convert a specific data to what to the required one. So behind the scene, if you actually want to print that out, or if you want to check the type of ID, you see that that's actually a float. Well, that is actually like 12.0. Yeah, so if it's possible for Python to convert it, it will actually convert it. But in a situation where we pass in something that it can't actually convert, or something outside the required parameter data type, then it will turn an error. So something like let's say ABC. Of course, ABC cannot be converted to a float by anywhere. I don't know if we understand. Question. No question. No question. All right.
Yeah, I think it's clear.
All right. So the silence means that we actually understand what is going on here. All right. That's perfect. So let's see another concept. All right. Another concept. So so like I said, parameters with types. So we can actually declare that using the standard Python type annotation or type hinting, like I said. So we basically just do go back to your function, and then after the function parameter, you put your colon and then the type of the expected data type for that parameter. And of course, your path can carry more than one path parameter, right? There's no law that says that each route can carry only one parameter. You can have as many as possible. All right. So you can still have another one that looks like this. That probably this one will get oh, what they even change the name. So this should be book detail. Please, one thing again to note, right, is do not repeat your function name, because what happens is that Python will automatically just pick the first one that matches that request and go. All right, so please don't repeat your function name. All right, so I have another one here, and this one we call it let's say appearance, or should I say dimension? We'll call this one dimension, right? And then of course this one will take in height. This one will take height, and this one can also go ahead and take width. All right. So this one will be height and width. Okay. And then of course we know that by default this will be passed to our function. So that means we need to create room for it. So I can simply create room for it here by coming here and say we need the height, and the height can be float, and we also need the width, and the width should also be float. And I'll do that by specifying it there in the function. And then I can now choose to return the height alongside with the width. So I'll copy that, and I'll do this and also do this. All right. So if we, and this should take us the dimension. So if we go back to our browser and then we navigate to dimension, and then of course this takes into required parameters, right? So if we try to access this without those parameters, of course there's no URL matching, there's no route matching the specified URL. So but we have a URL that takes in two required values after this dimension, and one, and the first value is the height, So we could go for, let's say, 10 or say 100 by 100. And of course, we have that there. So you see that this was supposed to be what floats, right? But then Python did the conversion. And like I said, if Python can actually convert it, it will do what convert it. So since this was supposed to be float parameters, and then what we provided there are integers, Python did what automatically converted them to float by adding what 0.0 to each of them. So you could see it there, and you can see it here. So your parts can actually contain as many parameters as possible. It all depends on you as a programmer. All right. So another thing to actually take note is the order in which these things has been arranged, the order in which your route is being arranged. So let's take a look at a simple example, right? Let's look at a simple example. All right. So let's say we have a view here. All right. So I'll leave those for now, and I'll come up here, and I will create another function. All right. Another route. Remember your first API is basically a bunch of functions alongside with the route. That's basically what your API is, bunch of collection of functions. All right, so we have another function here, and maybe this function here is a function that should get a specific book, or that should get a specific book, and of course this will have this URL of the same URL book detail. But then I want this particular URL to go to a book that has to go to a book that have a specific ID of me, right? And then I call this me book, for instance. And then I want to return my name. When you navigate to this URL, save your pass right there. Right. So you can see that if I try to navigate to this URL right here that we have here, I try to navigate to this URL that we have here, we get to see that okay, same thing we did again. We get to see that of course the first one will do what will actually execute. Let's see what we did. Okay, so it did return what my name here, Savior Basi, right? But what if I wanted to also go to the detail book that has a specific ID of 12? But then what happened? Okay, let's come back here. All right, so now let's change this one now, right? Let's leave this here. Let's just have that as it is. So let's assume that we have a particular route right under the first route that also takes path parameter, but then it doesn't have any specific data type at the moment, right? Now, if I try to access that URL again, you see that this URL will always tend to execute the first URL that we have there. So if I do this, and then I put 12 there, ID of 12, let's see what is happening. Let's break our server and let's restart this server. And then let's go back to our browser and let's refresh this. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Okay, sorry, the other way around. So I'll bring this one down here. I'll bring this one down right below here. And then, of course, we do it again. We go again. So let's refresh this again. Let's refresh that again. And then you see what I'm trying to explain here, right? Now, if we have a specific route, okay, and then each of these routes, right, have there's a route above your route that has a path parameter. For instance, we have the ID path parameter. And then we also have a similar URL. Of course, we have book detail with with additional with additional attachment to that URL. The problem here is that when we try to access this particular function, this one will always tend to fire. In fact, matter of fact, this function here will likely never fire at all. Reason is because when we navigate to book detail and then we specify a value after book detail, Fast API will automatically assume that what we assign after the book detail is this ID. But then Fast API is not also aware that there is also a similar URL down here that have a me after book detail, and then we intend to come to this URL. But then each time we want to come to this URL, it will fire the first route there. Thinking that this me here is what that this me there is what is the path ID. So that's why you have the ID being what? Me. Do you understand? Should I say that again? Should I explain that again?
I understand. I understand.
Right. All right. So in situation like this, right? In situation like this where you have this kind of problem, the order in which you arrange it actually matters. So in this case, you want this man here to come up, right, before the path parameter. So that if we navigate to /me, of course, this function will do what? Fire. But then if we have any other value apart from that, then this should actually what? Fire, hoping that that value is what is for the ID. All right. So please have that in mind as well, that order actually matters. If you have path parameters and then you have similar route, please let your path parameter go below and let that route go above, so that can fire up properly. All right. So let's look at another parameter called query parameter. Query parameter. All right. So what exactly is query parameter? All right, so these ones are basically the parameters that are attached to our URL. Like I said, they go as a dictionary, as a key value pairs immediately after this kind of sign in our URL. So I'm thinking of a website that we can go and try and find this. All right, but then I'm sure that if you go to any shopping mall or to any shopping platform, and then you search for a specific product, then you should see a similar URL that looks like this. That looks like this, right? That URL will look something like this, where it will have what? A question mark and then followed by some parameters like this. So then these parameters here is what we call query parameters. So we have the skip and the limits there being what? The query parameters, and then we have what? The 0 and the 10 there being the value. So one thing you should know about query parameter is that its values are naturally strings, all right? Because they are part of the URL, because they are part of that URL, they are basically string. All right, so let's see how we can actually do what? Create a query parameter like this. So it's simple, right? It's similar to what we did. So I'll copy this on, and then I will edit it down there, and then we edit it down there. So this one I'll call this query parameter. Query parameter. All right. So to actually create a query parameter, I will call this route. I'll call this route KodeCamp. Oh, that should be lowercase is KodeCamp, but it doesn't really matter if upper or lower. KodeCamp 4 slash. I'll call this intermediate. Right. And then to create a query parameter, we do not specify it in our route, similar to what we did here. Query parameter are usually specified in the function body. So if I come to my function here, and then I say a comma b comma c. All right. Now a comma b comma c become our query parameter. So any variable or any parameter we specify within our function initiation are our query parameters. Now, if I try to navigate here, this should throw an error saying that this actually requires what? This actually requires certain values for A, B, and C. So let's just navigate and let's just see what we see as error. So we go back to our browser again, and we'll paste this here. And I'll just click on enter, and it says not found, right? Reason is because we don't have that specific route. Though we have that route, but then there are things that are missing, and those things are what we call query parameters. So these are the parameters that come immediately after what? Immediately after our question mark, right? Our question mark. So to do that is quite easy. So what we have to do is for us to go back to our URL, and then we just going to specify certain things. All right, so let's go back and come back here, and then we provide a question mark for the value of A. So it comes, these values come as a pair, the key and then the value. So the key followed by equality sign, and then the value, we could call this one 10, and then we could have another one. If there are more than one query parameter, we join them with ampersand sign. So we have B being equals to 20. We also have C being equals to 30. Now, if I execute this, that should work. So let's see what's happening here. Let's refresh this. And let's reload the page. Let's confirm that we are actually doing the right thing. So we have KodeCamp 4, the book, and we have A, B, and C. Having those values there. So let's see. This should return a value. And for so that's that should work. Okay. A, comma 10 person B equals 20 person C equals to 30. Let's see. Error there. Let's see. All right. Give me a sec. Let's specify the default value first. Let's say this. Let's say that. And let's say this. And let's reroute. See what we have there. This telling us not found. Name this. So search underscore query. That isn't working. Give me a sec, guys.
Please, from the definition, shouldn't there be slash at the back of the code camp? Since that's how we are doing it for the at the back of the KodeCamp 4. No, I'm talking of the definition on your edges. At the back, shouldn't there be slash there?
Yeah, that's true. That's where the bug coming from. So that should go there.
And also front of intermediate, I don't think there should be because looking at the ones we have been doing before.
The front of
I
where?
don't think there is Intermediates, 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 front of intermediates. Looking at
Oh,
other codes. Looking at other codes. Let's see.
perfect. All right, that's where the ball came from. Please, who saw that? Your name, please. Pick that up.
Huh?
So that was
Check.
Mr. Samson, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
That's fantastic, Mr. Samson. All right, so going back again, of course, this should throw an error now, right? Exactly as expected. So the error here say that they are missing query parameters. We have the A, we have the B, and we have the C. So to actually create or to actually make room for query parameters, we simply go to our function and then we do what? And then we specify parameters within our function. Now, any parameter we specify within our function is automatically considered as query parameters. And then what happened is that when we try to navigate to this URL, first API will go to our route, and then what it's looking for is the question mark. And then immediately after the question mark, it looks for these parameters as a key value pairs. So meaning that it's looking for A alongside with its value, B alongside with its value, C alongside with its own value as well. So now if we go again and we look at our route at the moment, we do not have it at the moment. We do not have those required at the moment. So if we could simply come back here and then we put our quotation mark, our question mark, and then we specify our A being 10, and then if we have more than one query parameter, we separate them with ampersand. Right? And then we have our B being 20, and then we have our C being 30. And then when we fire that up, and then that should actually go through successfully. And then we can as well, similar to how we actually access the values of pass parameter, we can still access these values within our we can set these values within our function as well. So we can simply just call out the parameter by its name, A, comma B, comma C. And then if we refresh this, we should now see, excuse me, we should now see those parameters as a detail. So let's refresh this. And then let's refresh this page. And then we have what our parameters. Now you can see that the 10 and the 20 and the 30 is they're all in strings. They're all in strings. They're all in strings. So that's because I said that the query parameters by naturally they are strings because they are part of the URL. They are part of the URL. So we can as well specify the type as well. We can as well specify the type as well. So similar to what we did with the rest, we can still come here and then we put this our int, and then we put here our int, and then we put here our int. And then what happened is that Python will Fast API will automatically carry out type conversion on those values. So if the value for A is convertible to integer, then it will carry out that conversion. So if we come back here and then we refresh this, and I think I need to refresh and save again, and come back here, refresh this. Then we see that our values are pure integer. They are no longer in quotes. They are no longer in quotes. The quote is gone. So that's basically part parameters, and we can also specify type for what we can also specify data type for each of the query parameters as well, similar to part parameters. So both part parameters and query parameters are quite similar, except that part parameters is being specified on the route, while the query parameter is being specified in the function definition within the function parentheses. All right, but either way, both of these can still be accessed within our function, and then we can use this to carry out further logic as we see fit. All right, so we can also have a mix of this. We can also have a mix of this together if we want. So we can have both path parameters and query parameters as well. All right, so of course it's quite similar. It's quite simple as we've done the other ones. So we could call this path and query parameter. So I'll call this path and query parameter, and I'll copy this and paste that. And then we have our 4 intermediate, and then I want to get a specific user ID. So I'll call it one user ID, right? And then I want to also get the score of that person, of that user. So I'll call this one score, and score should be integer. And of course, you need to, in order to access the path parameter in a function, we also need to create room for what for it within our function. So I'll come here and I'll create room for what for the user ID, and I'll also expect this to be an integer. I'll expect it to be an integer, and then within my my return statement, I'll call this data, and I will want this to be, I want this to carry score. So I'll simply just return the score. Simply return the score, and I would simply also call return the user ID for now. And I will simply just return data. All right. So let's go ahead and let's try this out in our browser. So you go to our browser, and we'll paste this there. Remove the other slash, and I'll call this user ID of 1. Or then this will throw us an error saying that we are still missing what? A query parameter. And the query parameter is called score. So I will have to come back here again, put our query parameter there. Remember, query parameter comes immediately after your question mark. So your score equals to, I'll give this 100, and that actually showed as expected. Question. Question. No question. No question. All right. So the silence there actually means no question. Okay. Moving forward.
I have a question.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Please go back to the VS Code.
All right. VS Code there. All right.
If we're to return, I'm trying to return for the query parameter.
Okay.
The three parameters, the A, the C, the B, the C, separated by commas, but it keeps saying
Okay.
details not found, and I don't know why.
All right. So you're having difficulty with this, right? If I'm getting you right.
Yes.
All right. So you're trying to return the values of the A, the B, and the C. Is that it?
Yes.
All right. And so what error are you having there?
Okay. I'm sorry. It's a function. I think my functions have the same name. Sorry.
Oh. Well, yeah, even if your function do have the same name, that shouldn't conflict. Like this man here has the same name. The only thing that should matter here is the route to the function. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, it's not working.
can you send us a screenshot on the chat session and let's help ourselves out? Okay. We're waiting for that to send the screenshot. Any other question? All right, so the silence mean no question. Okay, so we'll continue. Silence mean no question. All right, so let's look at the request body. The request. Okay. All right, so we've looked at how we can have multiple path and query parameters. We've also looked at required query parameters. Now, required query parameters is basically you come in here and then you actually declare your query parameters and then you don't assign value to them. So that makes that this will make this URL to actually require those query parameters. All right. So it means that without them, this function will not fire. So that's basically required query parameters. Now for default, the default is that you can simply come here and the default that you can simply come here and then we do what? You can simply come here and then we specify value to it. So we'll come here and say, okay, let my A be 0 and let my B be 0 and let my C be 0, right? So now what happens is that even if I don't specify this query parameters, this function will fire because I have specified default values similar to default parameters in function. Our usual function here we can have specified default parameters. So now with this, I can actually navigate to this URL without the need of being what or specifying the query parameters value, and it will execute just fine. All right. Then for optional optional query parameter here. So the optional query parameter there. So the way optional works, right? It's similar to default, except that for optional, it means that that value can be empty, right? So the thing is that default and optional actually sound alike or look as if they're alike, but they're not. Now the difference is that for default, it means that this value is required. But then if not specified, I must give it a value because that place is required. That a value must go in there, whether from me or from the user, right? But optional is simply the opposite. It means that that field or that value can actually go without being filled in. So whether I fill it in or the client fill it in, that will still do what work. I don't know if we understand the explanation there. All right, so I think we have a picture there in our chat, and okay, so it's trying to, and it's not working. Okay, so what's the error that you're having? Okay, so this code looks correct to me.
It says details not found. Details
It
is
says
the
what?
key. It says details not found. Details as the key,
Okay,
not found as the value.
okay, details not found. All right. All right. So looking at this, it says, so have you specified values for A, B, and C and still having the same problem? In your URL, have you specified values for A, B, and C and still having the same problem?
Yes, that's what I did. and it's brought up that error.
Okay, can you give us a screenshot of your browser so I could properly understand that?
Okay.
Okay, I think someone has requested that self in the comment section. So send us a screenshot of your browser. Let's see what's you have on your URL. All right. While we're waiting for that, let's look at the last concept for tonight, the request body concept. So a request body is also considered a type of parameter, except the request body doesn't exist within our URL. A request body is basically information that is being submitted in in a request body, right? So let's say when we go to a specific URL and then we fill in some form and then we do what we submit. And those details are actually sent to the server as a request body. So it basically means that request body we can only access or have a request body only when we make any of the following what requests. Either a post request, a put request, or okay. Okay. I think someone has answered your question already. I didn't
Yes, I've
notice that.
seen it.
Yeah,
Yes, I've seen it. Thank you.
that is perfect.
Thank you.
That is perfect. These things can just be right in front of us, but yet it's difficult to see it. Yeah. All right, that is perfect. Well done. Who gave that selection? Who did that selection? Let's see. Who did that? Dereje. Perfect. All right, so let's look at the request body. Okay. So I believe that your problem has been solved, Miss Ada, and I assume that Miss Ada is a female. So request body is basically data that
Yes.
is sent. Okay. So request body is basically what data that is sent to our API, and then we also have how we call response body. So response body is basically all these things that we've been sending back to our server or to our client. Sorry. So these are all these return statements is basically the return statement, right? So basically, the opposite of response body is basically the request body. So that's what comes in as information to our API, right? And then to actually have a
Sorry.
request
Sorry. I
version.
don't know if I'm alone
Okay,
on this, but I'm not seeing anything on the screen. Like
you're not seeing you're
your
not seeing
screen
my
is not
screen.
showing. Yes. Only your phone.
Wonderful. Oh, is that visible now? It should
Yes,
be.
it is.
Okay, sorry for that. Okay, so to actually have a request body, it means that that a client has made a request, a post request specifically, because response body can't access it via a GET request. So there must have been a post request, right, that have been made to our URL, and we can do what we can simply just access it. So let's see how we can actually access or get a response body. So there are several ways this can be done, right? So one of the ways we are going to look at this night is using Pydantic, right? So Pydantic, please note that Pydantic has nothing to do with Fast API. It's a separate library on its own. Fast API only went and borrowed it and used for their data validation. Right? Pydantic is separate on its own, has nothing to do with Fast API. So Fast API only integrated it. That's why if you go through your requirements when you actually install Fast API, you say that Pydantic was actually installed alongside with it because Fast API expect that you should use this for request bodies for a problem like this. So so you can actually see request body as a form being submitted from by the client, right? And then what we want to do is we can create a URL. Okay, let's create a very simple URL. and we will call this URL submit details. So we'll paste this. This should be submit details. We call this submit details. Okay, and I'll give it a function that will be that same name. I'll call it submit underscore details. All right, and then we don't want it to have a query parameter as well, so we take it off. And then this should return a message. This should be called request body. Request body. All right, and this should return a message that says successful upon submitting this message. These details. It says successful. All right. So now let's see what happens. Now, in order for us to actually, because when we submit is a form data or a request body, right? It is being bundled and then sent to our function. So what we have to do is we have to do was specify a parameter that should do what, that should accept that from that request body, right? So we could just call this. We could just say, okay, this is we get assume this to be let's say details, right? Now, but that looks like a query parameter, but then we are going to give it a different type hinting, all right? And then fast API will automatically know that this is not a query parameter, but rather a request body, all right? So how do we do this? We have to simply create a more like a schema, all right? That will let fast API to know that this and this and this are the things that we require for any form data to actually what to actually being passed to what to this specific function. So if I don't know if there's anyone here that have used Django REST framework or that have been working with Django lately, you might have heard of model, right? So we are going to implement something similar to model, but then we are going to make use of Pydantic, right? So Pydantic is a third-party application that enable us to lay out a schema for what a data that we intend to collect, and then Pydantic will automatically validate the data before even passing it to our function. So for us to do that, we have to first of all create that schema first, and then to create a schema, we need the base model. So the base model can be imported from Pydantic, right? So we have to first of all we have to import it from Pydantic. We are saying from Pydantic, okay? Need to import base model. Base model. All right. So after that, we need to do what? Create a schema, or should I say a structure for the incoming data. And this structure can be created using a class. All right. So believe that we are already familiar with Python class. So we create a very simple class, and I'll call this class user. Remember, class must start with what? With the uppercase. The class name must start with uppercase. All right. So you have user by convention details. All right. So of course user details, and then this class should inherit from what? From base model. Right. And then within this class, we can now specify the expected field that we want. Right. In this case, I could say that one of the expected field should be so the attribute of this class should be the expected field that we want. So we could say that one of the expected field that we want could be the name. And then similar to
So, what
similar
are you
to
eating?
type hinting question. I think someone unmuted his mic. Is there a question? Am I going too fast? All right, so similar to this, we similar to how we actually did type hinting for type hinting for path parameters and query parameters. We also do do the same for the expected form fields. So we say that we are expecting a name, and of course this name should be a string, right? And we are also expecting, let's say, we will say age, and of course this age should be what should be int. And maybe we also get the email, maybe if you want email, and this email should be what string as well. So this becomes our template for what's for the expected data. So now after doing that, we then within our within our project there, our project, sorry, within our function, we can now say that let the let the details parameter, which at the moment serve as a query parameter. Now remember, I said that any parameter we specify within our function is considered as a query parameter, right? But then if I then come here and give a type hint, not of integer or of string, but then of the class we just created. Well, what happens is that Python, or sorry, Fast API will automatically know that that this function is expecting what a data, and then this data that is actually expecting should be of a type or of a structure that we've done what that we've created here, right? So what we simply do is we come here and we give it a type hint of what of user details. And to actually get form data, of course, like I said, we can't use get, so this should be our post request. And with that, we're done. And then with that, we're done. We can as well return the message successful, and we can as well return the details itself if we want. So I will put this up here and then put these details and then put that detail as well. All right. So let's take this out and let's see if that works as expected. Now the thing is that when we go to our browser, we cannot actually carry out a post request. So that's where our postman comes in. So we'll simply open up my postman so I can carry out that post request. So waiting for that to come up. Okay.
Why while we are waiting for that to come up, the base
Okay.
model that was imported was
Okay.
contained. Was it used for?
All right. So the base model actually comes from the Pandetic library. Okay. Now what it does is it enables us to create uh, fields or attributes that we expect a specific form data to do what to possess. So basically, what we're simply saying here is that we are saying that we need that we need to actually get a specific um, set of information, right? And then when this specific set of information, we are expecting that this information should carry a certain field, and then this field should be name, email, and age, and then each of these should have these following data types. Now, what Pandantic will do is that when we pass this to our function, Pandantic will validate that data and find out if there is this following fields available there, and if those fields actually carry this specified data types. So that's basically what that base model is doing there. All right. So there are a lot of code behind it. So instead of us to manually validating those data, Pandantic will automatically validate those data for us, saving us a lot of stress. Does that make sense?
No, I didn't understand.
And any other question? while my postman is indeed living like a postman. Second time. Any other question?
Mine's not a question per
Hmm.
se. I don't know. How soon can we get the recording to the class?
Okay. Very soon, very soon. We will get the recording. We will get the recording.
Okay. Okay.
We will get the recording. Just bear with us. Bear with us. Uh, Seems like my postman is taking time. This is wonderful. All right. Sorry, guys. Taking longer than expected. Taking longer than expected. Well, in the meantime, someone's postman is up and running. Please try executing that and let us know what you have there. Yeah, I can, but we'll cover Swagger in coming video. So for that, I don't want to use Swagger. We'll use Swagger when we get the documentation. Okay, let's see if that works. That suggestion works. Still, in the meantime, someone will still have to actually carry out that post request. So please, someone carry out a post request on Postman and let me know what is happening. So I'm waiting for someone to actually tell us the what he or she have. Well, I'm trying to sort out Postman. Anyone have done that? Anyone? Yeah, I will. I will. But not today. I will use the Swagger when we get the documentation. I'll use the Swagger. Never had this experience in my entire life. What is? Okay. So has anyone tried that? You're waiting for me.
Our postman is still loading too.
Ah, is it possible now? Eh? Can I or you cannot be looking as well? Okay, who else? Who else whose postman is not loading? Who else? No one. No one. No one at all. Wonderful. So all of us are our postman is loading. Eh? All of us are postman is loading.
I thought when we
Right?
download, I thought when we download Postman, we can use it without data.
Yes, we can.
Why is it taking so long to load?
You can use it without data. I'm waiting for us. Someone should execute it, and someone should execute the request and let tell us what we have on your end. We're entering this now. No one. No one. No one. One. Okay. Someone said that that they are joining with their phone. So as such, they cannot. Right. Someone else is on phone as well. Okay. No problem. So let's actually make the request. So in my request, I will change, of course, you change yours to post. Okay. So I'll change mine to post, and then when changing yours to post, you will simply go to body, and then I will go for raw, and then within my raw, I will type in my JSON as expected, because your data should come in as this JSON data. So quickly, I'll open up Pine, and I'll call this one. And remember, the schema says that where is our code? This the what we designed for this view is that this view must carry name, email, and age. So you can go back and then we go, sorry, postman, name, email, and age. So we have name, and name should be string. We also have email. Email should be string, and then we also have the age. Age should be integer. So in this case, I put 100 there. And email, I will put sample at gmail.com. And name, I'll just put in my name there. Say video call. And then what we need here is our URL to our post view. Okay, so we go to yeah, and then we go to a URL to our post view is submit details. But then we need a full URL alongside with domain, of course. So go back, come back here, and then we paste it there. And then we will now go and then get our submit details, which is post. And then we'll now go back to postman and call this submit details. And with that, we can go ahead and make our post requests. And what do we have? We have successful, and alongside what with our the message with what we just sent. So our Pandantic, they help us to automatically validate this. Now, this is one way that we can actually do a get request body, right? There's another option of using the body, the body module from Fast API, right? So this one we won't be using Pandantic again. We will use the body module from Fast API, and then we can extract each of the field in the body request, and then we can manually validate it ourselves. But the most convenient way is for us to do what is to make use of Pandentic, which of course when we move forward, I will show us how we can actually use the body module from Fast API for that validation. So going back again, let me recap everything we've done for today. So for today, we've actually looked at path parameters, and path parameters is usually what's defined in the decorator itself, in the function decorator, where you put your URL. So now within your URL, you can provide path parameters within curly braces, right? So these are basically variables that can hold any value in our URL. That's basically what path parameter is. They are variables that can hold any values within our what URL. And then these values is automatically passed to our function. So we have to create room for it as well in the function initiation. So we can actually do access it within our function and use it as we see fit. Then for query parameters is basically any variable that is being defined within what our function initialization, right? So now those variables that do not actually exist in our route, but exist in our function initialization is actually known as what query parameters. Example is what we have here, this score here. So just as score is a variable, but then it exists within our function parentheses, but then not in the routes. So now score here tends to be what our query parameters, and query parameters are usually followed immediately after what the question mark in our URL, right? In our URL. Then we have another one called the request body, which we just finished doing. All right. So the way the request body works is that the request body only come to our function via submission, right? Via submission of a form or of data, right? And there are requests that are being used when submitting what data. And one of them is the put request. We have the delete request, we have the post request, and so on and so forth, right? But then the get request is not used for submission of data. So as such, we could not carry out that post request with our browser because our browser only permits us for get request. So now when we submit a data, right, a form data, we can permit basically anything of our choice. We can ability submit anything. But then when we want to control what should be submitted and what data type is expected to be submitted, then that's where Pandentic actually comes in. So with Pandentic, we can create a schema, or we can create more like a blueprint of the kind of data we expect to be submitted, right? By creating what a class that inherits from base model, which is being derived from the Pandentic library. So now within our class, we can create multiple attributes. These attributes will help what Fast API to know, okay, this data that is coming into us, right, are expected to have so and so and so field, where each attribute represents field, or should I say dictionary key in the request body, right? And then we now type hint by doing what by specifying what each field should be, right? Or what each attribute should be. So in this case, we have what we have name, we have email, we have age, and then we've specified that name should be what string, email should be what string, and age should be integer. And with that, we can now pass it to our function as an int type, right? As a hint type. And with that, when we make a post request, and then the request body is being submitted, is being sent to that function. So what happens is that you need to create room for a request body, and then we say that let's ask that the request body can be accessed from where? From the data parameter. But then before we actually use it for further logic in our function, we want it to be validated by what? By Pandentic. So what do? We now select details be what? Be a type of what? Of the Pandentic class that we've just created, the user details. That way, the moment we submit, it actually cross-check. Have we given the required fields? Is there any other field that we've added that was not required? Or is the required ones or is the ones that we've submitted, are they of the required data type? And then this checks is being done for us automatically before we can do what? Proceed. That's why if you go back again to your postman and then you change age, probably you change age to, let's say, this, or well, let's say we change let's say email to, let's say, to an integer, something like this, let's say 12.5. When we try to make this request again, we get what? An error saying that a specific input should be what? A valid string, and that particular input should be is what is the email. All right. So that's the validation that I'm talking about here. So that actually works for us. Question. I'm still waiting for us a question. No question. Please, another thing you should know that is that there is usually tax, and tax will come, right? And tax will come, and you're not also limited to what we have here on the slide. What we've covered here in class. Yeah, of course, we are permitted to go out there and explore, right? And keep practicing. But I believe that we are intermediate. I should never be preaching this thing much because I know that we know. We know. All right. So is in the question? No question. None for now. None for now. Okay. So in the aspect of question, right? We'll come to an end of today's class, and we'll meet again on Tuesday as usual, 7 p.m. West African time. And if there is update, I will do well to share with us on the group, so we don't so we don't um, so we don't actually lose track of information. All right. So good night, and see you guys on Tuesday. Bye.